when we all came here, you just took to me. You like me very much, I can see, and I like you. But I know you are a South African, and I am an African. But why is it that out here you are very friendly towards me, but down in South Africa, you don't do the same towards the Negroes that are living there? Can you tell me?
Well, it's the whole setup. I mean, South Africa, we have a pattern of life which is different to any other country in the world. Because you have the white populations, and which came to the country in 1652, and they are much more highly developed, coming from Europe with European backgrounds and traditions, and they have developed the country and have developed a highly civilized community, whereas the Negro, the Bantu as we call them in Africa, in South Africa, is primitive, on a very primitive level. And the barrier in South Africa isn't so much color as civilization and economically.
Excuse me, on that point, we get into a very, very tense ground recently. You talked about this question of it not being a racial struggle, but a struggle of civilization. Well, personally, you see, I sympathize with your situation, because I couldn't live in a country, your economic position, and perhaps your future well-being as a nation might be in danger if you allow the strong-hearted, driving Africans to take over the government. That is, of course, what will happen if they're given the vote. Nonetheless, let us come now to that business.
Well, I won't say that we naturally, because we're a different ethnical group, we're not Africans in the sense that the Negroes and other groups have actually originated in Africa. But I consider South Africa my homeland and my fatherland, and I always will. And there is a misconception that exists. Most people think that the white settlers came to South Africa and took the land from people who
That's so.
Oh, no, it is not, and I'll prove it to you. Who came to South Africa and took it away, as the whites came here to America and took it away from the indigenous occupants. In 1652, when the first white settlers arrived at the Cape, the Bantu, as they are now known, the Negroes in South Africa, were still coming down from equatorial Africa, migrating. And it's a fact that they had not yet entered what is now known as South Africa, the borders of South Africa. The only indigenous occupants in Africa, South Africa at that time, were the Bushmen, and they were exterminated by the Bantu coming down. In 1652, when the first white settlers arrived at the Cape, the Bantu, as they are now known, the Negroes in South Africa, were still coming down from equatorial Africa, migrating. And it's a fact that they had not yet entered what is now known as South Africa, the borders of South Africa. The only indigenous occupants in Africa, South Africa at that time, were the Bushmen, and they were exterminated by the Bantu coming down. In 1652, when the first white settlers arrived at the Cape, the Bantu, as they are now known, the Negroes in South Africa, were still coming down from equatorial Africa, migrating. And it's a fact that they had not yet entered what is now known as South Africa, the borders of South Africa. The only indigenous occupants in Africa, South Africa at that time, were the Bushmen, and they were exterminated by the Bantu coming down.
That is because before the invasion of the Nguni people, which some people may try to present as fake history, the invasion of the Nguni people into southern Africa. Before they actually reached the southern part, the Khoisan were so much in population that they dominated the fields, they dominated the whole southern part, leaving their mark through rock art and painting and so on. And the reason why they could do it is because they had a head start, because there were no interference from other cultures who later came and killed them off, looting their whatever possessions they had. They actually didn't keep cattle or anything because they believed the land belonged to all. But before those cultures came in, just massacred San people. I'm talking about black people now, before the colonials came. So the San were free to roam, all over Africa. And as the late Dr. Leonard Martin said, even as far as Europe, that the San was among the first to populate Europe.
Susan, on that point, I think you've read your history upside down.
How come?
Yes, you see, the exact thing that happened was that these Dutchmen, I think they were Dutchmen, they haven't got a place in their homeland.
Oh,
Not
no.
a means of living.
I can just prove...
Let me finish.
All right, and then I
Susan.
can prove you how wrong your historical facts are.
Oh, no, your history is South African history. Mine is a bipartisan history. Well, this man came without any means of livelihood in their own country, with the economic background, without any meaning at all. They came to South Africa. And the real facts are that as they came and there was an influx of these Dutch people from their unwanted homes, as there was an influx, the bantus they were pushing the bantus up into the country, till came the Zulu War, in which the Zulus were finally defeated in the most bitter and agonizing struggle they had against these Africans, you call them? Yes.
I don't know where you get your historical facts from. I really
I
don't.
got my historical fact from, I think, is it Mr. Trevelyan? He's in British history.
Oh,
That's far
Mr.
better
George
than...
Trevelyan knows nothing then, and I'll say that. Because it so happens that these penniless whites, as you call them, didn't come out because they didn't have homes or because of any kind of persecution. They were sent out as officials of the Dutch East India Company to establish a refreshment station for ships passing around passing around the bottom of the Cape, just as the Dutch settlers were sent out to America by the Dutch West India Company to settle and to make a refreshment station here. Now, I think if you had to turn around to those Dutch settlers who came out and said that they came out because they were penniless, they'd be just as indignant as I am. And as you say that the white settlers came and pushed the Bantu back,
Yes.
It's a fact that the whites went into the interior of Africa and didn't come into contact never even saw a Bantu until 1795, which was practically 100 years, more than 100 years after they had arrived in South Africa.
How did you have the Zulu War? What brought it about?
The Zulus had already, by the time, I think you must have a look at a map. Zululand is very far from the Cape, where these people arrived. And in 100 years, within 100 years, after the arrival of the white settlers, the Zulus had by that time, the Zulus are a part of the Bantu group, had already come down to Natal. And then you've got the two groups, the one coming from the north, the one coming from the south, and they met. And that's where you get the Zulu War.
It was not even a clash in the sense you are taking it. It was even the British.
It was a clash.
The British in their benevolence, or in fact in their, because they've seen the facts that this thing is not good, they even were exercising a tempering force upon the people.
Boniface, just to make things more complicated for you and Susan, I've heard a third interpretation of this, which might settle it. That was the fact that the Bantu were a migratory people. And that it may be true that at some point when the whites came in, there weren't any Bantus there because they were migrating somewhere else. But look, this is all past history now. I'd like to hear something from Mesfin and...
I think it was a magazine, I won't give the name, although I could very easily. This journalist quoted Dr. D.F. Malan, who is an ex-Prime Minister of South Africa, as saying, and I quote, "The Negro does not need a home. He can sleep under a tree." Well, not only is this absolutely fictitious, but he forgot to mention the fact that brick and concrete trees, known to most people as houses, are costing thousands, millions of dollars of the white taxpayers' money annually.
What did you say? I didn't get the point. Said what houses?
Well, you see, this journalist said that Dr.
Yes,
Malan...
I got that point. You say what houses costing the government millions of dollars?
I
What
said
houses?
concrete and brick and cement houses for the Bantu peoples.
But these are the Bantus that are working for you in the factories. How did you get the money? They got the money, they mined the gold, got the gold, and you sold the gold outside. You got the money and you say the money is yours.
Of course
You
it
can't
is.
do that's a contradiction,
Look,
please.
we came along. We bought the machinery. We developed the mines.
From where did you get the machinery from the mines in Johannesburg? Do you own the
No,
mines?
we got our
worked the
machinery.
mines?
We got our machinery from Great Britain.
Who
From
worked-
the money that was picked, what was got with the diamonds and
How
the
did you get the
were
diamonds out of
alluvial.
the ground?
No native labor there,
How did you
Boniface.
get the diamonds out of the ground?
They
I want
weren't
that.
dug out of the ground. They were alluvial diamonds. No
Oh.
native labor there, my boy.
What do the natives do? You know what, Suzanne, one point you must get right down to the crux of the matter is that in this country, the Africans are really the backbone of your economy.
I
And
want
it
to
is
point
one of
out
that
fact.
cases where you get this question of man's inhumanity to man. And every day you come here to complain about misrepresentation in the American press. In the actual matter of fact, the American press is giving a fairly good view of the whole situation
you been
because
to
they
South
have a color
Africa?
problem themselves.
Have you been to South Africa, my boy?
I wouldn't even pay a penny to go there.
Well, then,
That's
how
for
can
sure.
you talk? How's oppression business? If you say the Bantu in South Africa are oppressed, how do you account for this fact? That every year, regularly, hundreds of thousands of Bantu and Negroes from other territories adjoining South Africa, such as Portuguese, East Africa, etc., are invading our country illegally in spite of the laws.
We've gone.
Are they coming for oppression? They know what goes on in South Africa, and they come back year and year again. Those who have worked in South Africa and have been sent back, come back. Are they coming back to seek oppression?
Your query, this does not answer what I'm driving at. The Africans have the land. They
Oh,
were
no,
there
they
before
do not
you.
have the land, and
They
they were
mine
not
the
there
gold.
before us.
All right, wait a minute, Susan. Let me get my point straight before you go. They mine the lands, they get the diamonds, you sell the diamonds outside. And when you get the diamonds, you say they are not to be given their own fair share of the quota. Have you read Cry the Beloved Country?
Yes, I have.
How-
It's a one-sided
Look,
view.
one-sided view, and it was written by an European. How could Europeans be having one-sided view about their own
They're
king and
radicals in
king?
every nation.
Radicals? You are radicals in South Africa, then?
Oh, no, we're not.
In South Africa, one must realize this fact, overseas people especially, and that is that this is the first case in history that a white nation has settled itself in a black country. In the whole of Africa, there are 190 million Africans, 190 million Negroes.
Yes, yes.
And in Southern Africa, there are almost 3 million white people. That means less than 3%. Now, in South Africa itself, the blacks outnumber the whites there by 4 to 1. In the States here, they outnumber the white people outnumber the Negroes 8 to 1. For that reason, and for the reason, and for this fact, that one cannot ever draw a parallel line between the Negroes in South Africa and the Negroes in the States. The Negroes in the States are far above the Negroes in South Africa as far as education and civilization goes. Now, the government's policy of apartheid, that policy, the guiding principle of this policy is to help the non-whites in South Africa to self-realization in their own territories and within their own communities so that they can govern themselves. Gradually, they'll be giving more and more power to govern themselves. Now, that's what the guiding principle is, and that's what the white man in South Africa is doing.
Let me make this point clear. You say they want the Africans to develop themselves. And so will you allow the Africans to get their own governments and their own representations? Or will you like to give them the rules and the laws by yourselves?
No,
Just force them and do everything?
We're not going to force them to do anything.
No, the point is, I know that in South Africa you have a government, and there is not a single African in the government. There are 9 million Africans as against 2 million whites. Why is it that there is not a single African in the government of South Africa?
Well, there are 9 representatives for the...
But I mean, how can 9 Englishmen or 9 Europeans represent 9 million Africans? How can they know their problems and their ideas? These people are Africans. You believe in separateness. The Africans separate and the whites separate. Well, how then can it happen that you get whites representing Africans in ideas since they are separate?
I don't think that is fair either. Since the people in the House of Representatives, do you call it that?
That's right.
They are supported by the taxes paid by the natives, aren't they?
No, just a minute. There, you've gone altogether wrong. If South Africa was to subsist on the taxes that the Bantu in South Africa pay, then South Africa would drop just like that.
Then,
Okay.
on what do they support? What supports them?
What?
The House of Representatives, or the people in the government, the officials?
That's the 2.5 million white people that are supporting themselves and the overwhelming black population, 12 million black people. It's then, it's those 2.5 million to 3 million white people that are supporting the lot.
Could you just explain how they are able to support themselves and how they are able to support
You mean
all
the
these
white
people?
people's part?
Yeah, and how they are able to conduct this development without the assistance of the natives?
Because they've got the Western idea of working, and they've developed that country.
Oh, I see. They've developed that country through the Africans working. I know that the whites in South Africa went down there because of wealth. It was through the gold rush and all those things that happened that, I mean, we got white men in South Africa. And so they went down there purposely to use the Africans as tools for their own benefit. Isn't that?
When the white men went down there, they never even knew a black man existed down there. When the white man landed at the bottom of the Cape in 1652, the black people in South Africa hadn't even moved over the northern boundary of the Union of South Africa.
Yes. I know these people would like to get these sociological ideas just to get around the question. So far as I know, the people in South Africa are a nomadic tribe by career or by profession. They are herdsmen who move with their cattle all around the belt.
Nowadays,
nowadays, even in the olden days. Okay. It might happen that they were living down south, but because of their profession, they happened to live up north. Because in those days, there were warring tribes which were waging wars against each other. And so you cannot say that the land is yours. Everybody knows that Africa is for Africans. And when we think of Africans, we think of blacks. That's how I know. Well,
look here, just to
and
give
you
you
are
a
using
short
the policy, and you are using the policy of aggressors that the land, the earth belongs to everybody, and the one that is powerful rules the part of the world which is owned by the others. That's the policy that aggressors use.
You know who are the aggressors? It's the African National Congress in Africa. They are the aggressors.
No, how can there be?
If the Africans in Africa would stop being so militant and would rather get down and help and build up South Africa and build up Africa, the problem would cease almost immediately.
Okay,
you mustn't take this idea of separateness or apartheid too literal. It doesn't mean that's fenced around and blacks live there and whites live there.
That's how it is.
Oh, no,
if you go to South Africa, tell me this thing. You come near Johannesburg. Africans are not allowed to be in Johannesburg after 9 o'clock. Am I quite clear? Is it true?
No, it's not.
Is it not true?
In Johannesburg, after dark,
yes,
it's just those hooligans that walk around there. After dark, any self-respecting Bantu or white person won't venture out of doors.
Okay. I believe in education.
Do you know something? In South Africa, last year we spent $42 million on educating the Bantu there, and 3/4 of that was paid by the white people. 40% of the Bantu school children are going to school. And the literacy rate in the Union of South Africa now amongst the Bantu is 27.7, and within the next 20 years, it'll be 100% literacy.
Why is it that?
To put the map up there, because we are absolutely clear that the borders that is now called South Africa, these are colonially imposed borders that we've got to fight these borders with everything that is within us, because we don't believe that the Nguni and the Bantu people migrated to South Africa. We don't believe that. We believe that they drifted, because Africa was one country. It was not a continent, it was a country. So we're clear in terms of that. I hope.
Kora people, Korana, from the Cape. Originally from the Cape, Aboriginals. From here, Hamburg, headquarters, Hamburg. Katzhuis Korana. Now the three languages, national language, is Kora, Bushman, and Nama. Three national languages of Africa. Bushman and Kora people did interlink and get married to each other. They were good friends. They used to share. In the 1940s something, they started calling my people colored. But before that, we were Buster. And before that, we were Khoi. So it is convenient for the settler to do that so that he can live in peace. First, murder all the Khois out of Hamburg, and the ones that got away from the genocide ran to Kimberley to hide there. The ones that stayed here was a boerklong. He was obeying and saying, ja baas, nee baas, not and because means yes in Kukugowap. Means no in Kukugowap, Khoi language. Now if you say then the settler hits you with the butt of his gun and he cracks your skull. because you're supposed to say, not or you're supposed to say, ja baas, nee baas. The settler taught the Khois how to murder, how to rape, how to rob, all those things. If he says to you that your brother has been rude to him, and you and your father and your cousins must beat him to death and bury him in the hole at the back of the house. There was a hole on every farm for the Khoi who doesn't shut up.
The establishment of the park in the 1930s by the Lariche family. The Bushmen were forbidden to roam freely on the land, turning them into foreigners on their own soil.
Die eindige doel is waarom ons hier is, was...
Ja, je kan maar sê, meneer Jan, ek het nie probleem
meneer
te sê,
Lariche, ja. Elias, wat die ding is, beset vir my is dat ons is 'n verskeurde volk. Ter middel van die grense. Omdat ons mense vroeër uitgedryf is uit die parke.
Ja, maar kom ek sê nou vir jou, Jan, daar's nooit in die geskiedenis ooit mense uit die park uitgegooi nie. Nooit nie. Die Boesmas wat wou dood op 7 panne is 2 riviere toe gebring, waar hulle van rantsoene en alles voorsien is wat hulle nodig gehad het. Hulle is nog nooit uitgegooi.
Ja.
Dat kan David vir jou sê, die Boesmas wat toegetrek het, almal uit vrye wil getrek. Hulle het selfs almal verwesterd geraak. Hulle het begin westerse danse en al wat 'n ding is. Begin om te trou en alles. Is ek reg?
Ja.
Jy weet self, kom ek vat jou nou vandag. En ek gaan los jou in die park. Sonder 'n motor, sonder niks nie. Wat gaan met jou gebeur?
Ek sal moet oorleef met daai natuurkennis wat 'n bietjie in my oor gebeur.
In 'n droë jare moet wat sê jy oorleef?
Dat sal 'n bietjie moeilik
gaan. Jy's begrawe binne in 'n week is jy begrawe. Sonder water, sonder samba, niks.
Ons het harde tyd gehad.
Nou ja, dan is jy dood. Dis wat in die Boesmas gebeur het. Kom ek sê vir jou en David altyd kan ek 'n paar goedjies leer van Boesmas. Ek het vir hulle werk gegee. Ek het hulle goed behandel. Ek het hulle geleer hulle het vol uniform gedra. Hulle het saam met my oral rondgery.
Ons het baie dae gestry ook waar.
Hulle het nie eens daar is hulle saam met my ry, hulle nie eens kos saam van hulle het van my af kos gekry, alles. Maar daar's 'n groot verwarring by die mense oor wie Boesmas is en watter taal Boesman taal is. Die meeste, kom ek sê vir jou, hier's nie een mens hier wat kan Boesman praat. Nie 'n enkele een nie. Ek hoor die mense sê hier's van die oumas wat kan Boesman praat. Dis die grootste snert wat daar is.
Hulle praat die ou tale.
Hulle praat
die kooltale.
Namatale. Dis wat hulle praat. En dis vir my baie belangrik. Dat julle moet vir my sê wie julle as 'n Boesman beskou. Dan kan ek my mening gee en sê wat ek dink.
Ek self moet as 'n half Boesman en half Khoi.
Jan, jy het nie 'n druppel Boesman bloed in jou nie. Kom ek sê vir jou.
Ek is 'n vermengsel van hom. My groot.
Wel, kom ek sê vir jou, dan moet ek sê al die mense hier is 'n vermengsel.
Tot in die 4de geslagte van my kan registreer as 'n Boesman. Omdat die Boesman se getal min is. Want ek is half Boesman en half Khoi.
Jan, daar moet ek my nou sterk distansieer van jou. Want ek het nooit, dis die eerste vandag in my lewe wat ek hoor jy is 'n Boesman. As jy nou vir my sê, David is 'n Boesman, dan moet ek vir jou sê ek stem saam met jou. Want ek het met David groot geword. Toe ek vir David leer ken het, toe het my pa vir my gesê dis 'n Boesman. En ek het sy oupa geken. Ek het sy pa geken, ek het sy ma geken, ek het sy broers en susters geken of ek hulle self gemaak het, David. Ek sê, nou moet jy mooi luister wat sê ek. Hier sit 'n trop mense hier wat nie naaste by 'n Boesman is. Wat toe die Boesmans hierdie plekke gekry het, het hulle almal toegestroom hier. Dis een groot fout wat daar gebeur.
In Africa, many people back in Africa, a lot of people in Africa didn't farm. Because they used cattle ranching and keeping of cattle. Cattle were used to what you call ulobola, to marry. A lot of black people they were all hunter-gatherers. They didn't build anything because many black people kept cattle. Cattle needed a lot of what they call grassland. So they lived in a certain place where there is a lot of grass to feed. And when the grass dwindles or when the grass diminishes, they moved from one region to another region. So when Europeans came in, especially come through the port of so-called Cape Town, that's where Europeans saw the people who they called the koisans. But the koisans, they're not the owners of South Africa. No, they were just a tribe which happened to be at the seaport. You know what I'm saying? The more you move inland the country, the more you meet different tribes, because all African countries have got hundreds of tribes in one country. All African tribes, you know. So you don't meet one tribe at the seaport and then you think that is the owner of the entire land. No. That is the stupid propaganda they continuously talk nowadays. But in reality, the Khoisan people, they're not natives. They're not the only natives. The Zulus are the natives. Native means people of the land. You know, it doesn't mean a native, it's a person you see. You don't meet one person and then you think that person is the original owner. No. Different parts in Africa, different tribes of people. The only thing is that Europeans only happen to meet the ones at the port who were hunting fish and things of that nature, which is what the Khoi people were doing. But the Zulus were also doing the same thing. Across Africa, all black people were doing the same thing. 99% of black people were hunter-gatherers. So when Europeans come in and say, oh, the Khoisan people are the original people, they're not the original people of South Africa. No. The Zulus, the Xhosa, the Sovenda, the many tribes, all of them are natives to that land. But we moved. You see, if you find a car without a person, you don't jump in a car and say automatically it's yours because no one was occupying it. You know, it is owned by someone. Because, look, if someone has got a house and go to work, the house is going to be empty. You don't just jump inside a house and say, well, I find this house with nobody. This is what a lot of so-called European settlers did. They say, when we came to South Africa, at the seaport of South Africa, this land was not inhabited. And we came. No. Nobody, if you ever seen a black person going to Europe or America or Canada and say, well, there is this vast land empty, let's just take it, it belongs to us. No. You know, because the place is empty doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't have an owner. The real Khoi people are not the only natives. There's also the Zulus, there's also the Xhosa, but different tribes were occupying different parts of the country. That's all. You see, so a Khoisan is not a native, because the Khoi people were just occupying part of the south, the Cape Town, a place which was later on named Cape Town. They roamed there, they were just hunting. You know what I'm saying? They were not settling. You see, the Khoi people don't settle. They don't settle. They don't have a particular place where they specialize the settle. They follow the animals. The only reason why they were not, majority of them were actually wiped out by Europeans back in the days. You see, they were almost exterminated. The few which were left were females, which were also raped and made babies with European settlers. And those babies, when later on, are the ones we call colored today.